Hey everybody, it's Cam from the Nerdbook Review with my February of 2024 roundup. Let's just start off by saying that February just completely went off the rails, basically from the very beginning. I thought that February was going to be my final month where I didn't do a whole lot of work. Unless this is about my first video or one of my first few videos that you have watched from me, you'll know that my whole shtick is that I do most of my reading in my tractor. About 9 months a year, I spend 50 to 60 hours a week in that tractor. I make compost. There should be a picture up of the tractor slash composter. And I do most of my reading there. I try to do most of my videos at my house. I'll do some shorts there, but the tractor's super loud. Unless it is basically perfect weather to be outside. It's either too hot or too loud or whatever in the tractor cab. So I do most of my longer videos sitting here at home, and then most of my reading is done in my tractor. Well, I take December and I take January off, and I planned on taking all but the last week of February off as well. And I was going to get a bunch of short videos out. I had about 80 episodes of my podcast that were just in audio form. I planned on doing a bunch of 5-minute reviews of those old episodes that I was going to put out 1 or 2 a week for the next 9 months or so. And I just thought that I was going to get a bunch of stuff done. Well, the place where I have my largest contract, we're talking somewhere around 90% of all the work I do is for one company. They asked me if I would come in and run excavator for them and load trucks. They were just behind, they're shorthanded, and I've spent about 10,000 hours over the course of the last 10 years at various points sitting in an excavator. And so, you can't really say no when the person is, responsible for 90% of your revenue, asks you to do something for them. I was getting paid still, so it's not like I could just say, hey, sorry, not going to do it. Well, because of that, though, I was not able to do a bunch of the reading I planned on doing. I wasn't able to do a bunch of all those videos either. Between working and then my son, I've mentioned before, he is on a competitive soccer team. And even though he's only 8, he still has soccer 3 days a week. He actually just had a tournament where he got to play on the blue turf at Boise State. They've got famously a blue turf stadium. He got to play soccer on it this weekend. So it was a lot of fun. But, I just have a very busy life right now with 2 kids, a business, and, all the other fun stuff that you got to do in life. Because of that, though, I did not get a lot of reading done this month. I was able to get several books done on audiobook, because I was sitting there in an excavator loading trucks, and I was able to listen. And but that aside, I think that I've probably found both of my favorite books of the year already this month, which is kind of shocking. But I will say this, that the 2 books I'm going to talk about, for them to be dethroned as both my favorite fantasy book and my favorite sci-fi book, it's going to take something really, really, truly special. We obviously, because of that, I know they'll be on my books of the year list since they're 10 out of 10s. And let's talk about those real quick. Started the month off, I got The Bitter Crown by Justin Lee Anderson. It is the second book in the Eden saga. It's better, I would say, a little bit than the first book, The Lost War, which I also very much liked, and which at the moment I actually was my first podcast episode when I came back that was only in podcast form. So I still need to get a video recorded of that. I don't like to do second books of a series as much on these episodes unless I'm talking about the whole series. And there's some pretty crazy spoilers towards the end of The Lost War that I don't think you can really talk about the second book, The Bitter Crown, at all if you're trying to remain spoiler-free because of that. So I need to get that episode recorded. I gave it an 8.5 to a 9, somewhere in that range. I think I gave it a 5-star on Goodreads, so that'll be a 9 out of 10. It's not quite going to be on my book of the year list, but it follows the second, what happened after the Bitter Crown, and we'll do an episode on that here sometime soon. The second book I read this month is a book that I gave a hard 10 out of 10, and that I think is probably going to be my favorite fantasy book of the year, and that's called The Way of Edan by Philip Chase. It is the first book in the Edan saga, which was a trilogy that he put out all 3 books in last year. So if that's important, This one's basically an analog to medieval Europe and Christianity and their takeover from like the pagan religions. And but this is done in a completely fantasy world. Really enjoyed it. As I've mentioned before, I have backgrounds with both history and theology as far as my degrees go. So this was that kind of book that, like, I don't think that Chase could have sat down and talked with me about what a book that I would enjoy would have been. And I don't think he could have done a much better job if that had been the case. So I will have that review out on March 7th. That's when it's currently scheduled. And huge fan of the book. Then after I did The Way of Edan, I actually had a couple of books planned that I was going to read that I just didn't have time for. And I had the first 2 audiobooks of the Sun Eater series by Christopher Ruocchio. And oh my goodness, that is one hell of an amazing space opera series. I have done a mix of reading and listening to audiobook. I'd say I'm probably somewhere around 60-70% has been audiobook. The audiobooks are amazing. The narrator is just wonderful. I have loved these books. They're a space opera. I am a bit of a sucker for a space opera. We follow a character named Hadrian Marlowe. At the time of the book, it's basically being narrated as his histories, his memoirs in a way. And he's like 1,500 years old as he's telling these tales of things that have happened, you know, a long time in the past. Just space opera on the most epic grand scale that you could possibly think of. We're talking like galaxy-spanning empires. I loved him. I mean, they are going to go right up there with the Vorkosigan Saga and Red Rising as my favorite sci-fi books of all time. I'm a space opera fan. I don't care about hard sci-fi. I'm just going to say that right now. I love my epic space operas, basically fantasy in space, right? You're just using technology in the place of magic. Big fan. So because of that, I'm currently on book 3, and I've done a couple of the short stories already as well. So I guess you could say that 3 or 4 of the books that I ended up doing this month were all from the Sun Eater series. And then I'll have read 2 more books. Empire's Daughter by Marion L. Thorpe. It is a unique premise where men and women have separated a couple hundred years prior to this. Men wanted to basically have their Roman Empire style empire. They wanted to keep expanding and taking over territory. The women were opposed to it. So the men and women split apart. They actually only get together once every 6 months to do the kind of things that lead to babies. And otherwise, women live in women's villages. Men live mostly in the army until they're old enough to retire in their late 50s. And then they'll go off to farms or do whatever it is they're going to do. But no mixing of the sexes outside of what they'll call festival weeks, and definitely a unique premise. I gave that one a 7.5. The review for that one will be out on March 10th. Then the last book that I have read, I'm actually, as I record this one, about 80% done, and I'll finish that up today, and I'm so far a pretty big fan of it. I'm thinking we're probably going to give that a 9 out of 10. So what I did read this month obviously was a pretty darn good month for me, but Rites of Passage by M.D. Presley is an arc that I just received a couple days ago when I didn't receive Mushroom Blues by Adrian Gibson because he's pushed that back a little bit. I decided to slot this one in that place. The book comes out on April 1st. Yes, on April Fools. And it's an urban fantasy, follows a single point of view character. I've mentioned previously that that I loved. It was the book before The Way of Edan that I would have said was the closest to where if M.D. Presley had sat down with me and we went over a series that I would love, that was probably the one. I really feel like it's just a criminally underrated book and a criminally underrated series, the Soul's Harvest series by M.D. Presley. And part of that was that I think that he didn't quite have the sales he expected with the first one. Things just kind of went off the rail from there, and he's just never really done any promotional material since then on that series, even though he did finish it up last year. So did not get very much done. As I mentioned, Bitter Crown, The Way of Edan, the first 3 books of the Sun Eater trilogy, as well as one of the short stories, and then the Empire's Daughter, as well as Rites of Passage by M.D. Presley. That might sound like a fair number of books still. What is that, 6, 7? But, for me, that's just not quite what I was hoping to do this month. I also pushed back a bunch of books that I initially planned on doing. I tried to start reading Blood and Fire by Ryan Cahill, and this is absolutely nothing against Blood and Fire, but I made it only like maybe 20, 30 pages in, and then I was like, I really want to listen to book 2, or I did a mixture of reading and listening of the Sun Eater series, and that's what I did instead, and now I've done 3 of them. So there's some books that are going to be pushed back, obviously, to March. The March episode will come out the day after. This one should be out February 29th, and right coming after this one, the next day, I will have my March TBR, and we'll get to that one. Like I said, it was just a weird month between being so busy with work and not being able to do the reading or the extra videos that I planned on doing. And then also ending up with the Sun Eater series, having it available on audiobook. I should mention that the first 2 books are still free on Audible. If you decide that, me talking about that or space operas are your thing, then I absolutely recommend going ahead and getting these 2 books, since you can get them for free. At this point, I've actually bought the ebooks to go along with it, so that when I'm not able to listen, I'm reading. And I think that's actually helpful anyways. A lot of times for me with audiobooks is that, if I can have both the audiobook and the ebook, that it helps with spelling, words, things like that. And this narrator is so amazing. At this point, I'm on book 3 now, and I'm about 70% through it. So definitely moving through this series. I think there's 5 full books and some novellas at this point. And, I'm just going to keep going here and there with these audiobooks until I catch up to where he currently is. It is kind of funny to me, though, where I've read 7 books this month, I guess, in the end, and I just feel like I didn't get what I intended to do done. I missed 4 of the books that were on my TBR, and I'm going to have to push those back, obviously. So tomorrow you will see my March TBR and my planned reads, and hopefully we'll be able to stick to that one a little bit better. I am fairly busy already with what I'm doing on work, so about probably right now 4 days a week this first month or so, I will be turning compost. That gives me like 8 to 10 hours a day where I can read or listen to audiobook, basically the entire time. So my reading, my book numbers are going to go higher. And then where my problem is going to be is finding time to actually record videos and do my editing and all that stuff. I'm going to have to probably choose, say Sunday mornings or Saturday mornings when my son doesn't have soccer games, and try to, get up early and do a bunch of those recordings. I still want to try to spend some time with my wife in the evenings. And since, 2 to 3 nights a week, my son has soccer practice, and that's not an option. I don't get home till like 8:30 at night on those soccer nights of his. And then when I'm getting up at 4 or 5 in the morning to go to work, then, that doesn't leave a lot of time then. So basically 3 evenings a week is all that my wife and I have where one of us isn't running a kid to a sporting event. So it's just I'm going to have to, make a real effort to get these videos edited. I was already getting past that point where I was really busy last year when I really started doing videos more than 1 or 2 a week. So it's going to be, an adjustment that I hope that I can carry on with and continue getting all my stuff done. I just want to thank everybody who is watching these videos, everyone who is commenting, liking, and has subscribed to the channel. We're just about to 400. I think I'm at 399 as this video is recorded, and hopefully, I can get up there and then we can keep on moving. I have started to feel more comfortable doing some interviews and stuff like that. So I've actually talked with several authors who I plan on interviewing. I did one with C.T. Phipps already. The quality wasn't great on that one. I had some issues with the download on that, and I've talked with the StreamYard on ways to fix that. So hopefully moving forward, that'll be better. And then I've also talked to a couple of YouTubers who mostly do live videos, and I'm going to go on their channels as well. I'll make sure I mention that before I do that. Thanks again. I hope you all have a wonderful day, and I will see you tomorrow with my March TBR. Thanks.